Welcome to Talking in Stations. It's Matterall here. I'm with Ashtarothi.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and it is Friday. The weekend is here. It's time for us to stop pretending to work all the week and get to our Eve weekend.
That's right. We're also here with Rundle. How you doing, Rundle?
Fellow New Eden Capsuleers. I'm not as good as he is. Hey, everyone. It is the weekend. Time to do your Eve jobs and do your Eve fun things.
Yeah, Ash, you inspired him. He was trying to come up with the same kind of energy that you bring to the program. But he sounds like Space Ghost.
I mean, I don't know. I actually have sat down and put a lot of work or thought into what kind of shticks and whatnot. So I'm glad that it pays off.
It's kind of like opening Hello PvP in a way. Is the way I'm just trying to come up with a couple different ways to combat your over the top amazing energy, because I want to listen when you talk, and then I have to talk at this point too, so I need to get myself all ramped up too. So
all right,
that's all right. We actually don't have a ton today, so if we do have any sort of if we want to meander in our thoughts or whatever at any point, feel free to talk as long as you would like to.
Let's start with some corrections. And boy, do we need to correct. Yesterday, we had a show where we talked about how to cash in on this change that's coming with the industrial upgrades. I guess you can call it an upgrade, but it's a kind of a...
Turns out building faction battleships is really bad. Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding.
No, still a good idea. But I did say that these changes where they expand the ingredient base to the items is going to affect T2 next. And what I meant was modules. For some reason, I always think of T2 and modules at the same time. But really, it was modules will be probably configured to eat up a lot more ingredients. There was another correction too, right?
That is correct. Well, actually, I had one. I don't know if we talked about this, but when we talked about the hunt, a couple of things. One, I did actually forget to mention the fact that there's login rewards. Whoopsie daisy! But I think that if you even start right now, you can still get them all.
We covered that yesterday.
Excellent. The important piece to that, though, is that the keys are the second day. If you're an Omega, you get 2 extra keys, and if you're an Alpha, I think you get 1. And people are buying those keys, so. I don't know, because they need them in order to be able to run a whole bunch of the sites. So at the very least, if you log in that second login day, if you're not going to use them, if you don't care about the event, find somebody who does, because it's worth money to them.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, that correction, I want to thank EvanX13, who pointed it out that I had said T2, and he was setting me straight, which he should have, that T2 is already a complicated process. So anything Tech 2 already requires multiple ingredients and all that sort of thing. So again, I meant modules. Right. Modules will probably get an expansion as far as what kinds of things need to go into the T1 variants of modules. Then we think rigs. Then we think more things along the lines. We think eventually everything will have a little bit of multiple things, including stations, we think, or structures.
Yeah, but there is, a small asterisk to everything, right? If you're going to build Marauders or Black Ops, I think I talked a little bit about this last night, that's going to take a straight up battleship. And that recipe will change to the new recipes, which will take some of the new materials. And so that T2 ship, by proxy of it using a T1 battleship, will actually now can be in the path of the new change with some of the change, although the T2 recipe itself doesn't change, and who knows what they'll do long term on the T2 ship recipes. So anyways, small little asterisk, like everything in Eve, there's a little gotcha somewhere along the way.
Yeah. Also, we talked about somebody said something really interesting in the YouTube comments about the loyalty point store will help balance out the faction battleship costs, so it may not reach 1.6 billion, as we said is possible hypothetically. And we know
right,
that high.
But even those LP stores still require the basic ship first.
Right, but the battleship may go down in price, so it may actually get cheaper.
Right.
But the faction variant, in order to build it, will cost more. I think you can actually buy faction variants, right? You can buy Navy.
So the Megathron's going to get cheaper?
Yeah. Some calculations show the Megathron. It's mixed. Some people say it's more expensive. Some people say it's less expensive. It has different ingredients, but overall, in today's prices, it actually gets a little bit cheaper. But the
interesting. But it does have the new components.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of it's in some ways incalculable right now. Yeah. But
so listen,
what it is.
The bottom line is this: what we said yesterday is still what we recommend. What I recommend. So only blame me, not anybody else. And the faction battleship may go to about 1 billion, a little over 1 billion, or a little under 1 billion. But that's like my intuitive projection, and it's based on it's just experience. That's it. Okay, so.
And sadly, no one sent me $100 million for my top tier investing information that I was going to send. You sent me $100 million. I will show you how to make $1 billion in EVE. That was my offer yesterday, but hey, no one took me up on it. Probably smarter to not than to do, but it was worth a try.
You ended up buying some stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I fell for my own scam, so I ended up dropping. I think the last I looked, I dropped. Let's see if I do the math right. We'll carry the one. About 17 billion ISK yesterday on some various blueprints and straight up ships. So yeah, we'll see. I took the advice. I took your advice, Matt. I'm all in, almost all in.
All right,
we'll see.
Well, you can take it out on me if it doesn't work out. Go ahead, Ash.
Yeah, I was spending a little while chewing on the numbers, looking at like Triglavian stuff.
And what are you going to do?
What
are you getting for Christmas?
Well, we have a major stockpile of stuff, and so one of the things where I'm kind of at right now is that a lot of these things, because the materials are changing in certain ways, it might be worth locking them up just to refine them potentially afterwards if necessary. So, I have a very big stockpile of certain minerals, and so trying to figure out where we can most strategically use them. Probably Triglavian stuff. Mm-hmm. Right now, Lyshax and Drex are still seeing a lot of use and have a lot of really pretty good margins still right now. And I think that Drex and Lyshax are still going to be super useful in that era. And, especially since anything that allows you to punch higher pound for pound than you are will be good if things like capitals and stuff become harder to deploy. If you can't just drop dreads willy-nilly, then you're going to want to have a few Lyshax laying around to get the job done.
Yeah, good point. Okay, a couple other things that we didn't mention. These are not corrections, but they're just adjustments to some of the advice that I gave, is to look out for CCP changing drop rates for things. That may actually help lower prices since the construction now is expensive. They may be up the rarity, so it's less rare, and therefore the prices go down. Also, think about the other side of this. Do you have things in asset safety? Might be a good time to take them out of asset safety before they double in expensiveness and therefore cost you more in fees to unload those. So take a look around you, and remember, there's another side to this. If prices go up, getting stuff out of asset safety will be cheaper now than it will be later. Okay, so
right. Well, so I just want to say one more thing about this, though, just to talk about the complexity issue. So the way it works right now is that everything T1 is dirt simple. Like, I didn't do industry for 8 years, really. And then when I started getting into it, what I realized was basically almost all of T1 industry boils down to take minerals, take blueprint, rub together, get thing. It really doesn't get much more complicated than that, with very few exceptions. Sometimes you have to rub together something to get something, and then rub together those things to get another thing, and then you're done. Yeah. Literally, that's it. T2 production is mind-blowingly complicated in comparison, right? You have invention, which has its own set of skills. Each thing you want to invent has specific skills about that thing. 2 different skills go into that. And so whatever, if you want to change to a different thing, you got to make sure that people have the skills to do it. You can do the invention, you can do the build, like you can't just take a blueprint and the materials and rub it together and get it. If you don't have those skills to do it, it just tells you to go pound sand. So in every single step, it's not only more difficult in like the amount of steps, but each step is totally different. It introduces all new mechanics. Reaction materials become necessary. You introduce all different kinds of things that is pretty much unmanageable for a one-person operation by themselves with no structures or anything. Whereas in industry, anyone can build, or T1, most people you could build whatever the hell you want in a station. And sure, you may not be the most profitable, but at least you got your battleship built right here. What this is trying to do is take a lot of that incredibly flat plane of the T1 industry field and build a little bit of texture to that, and take some of the things that they've learned as they've built other kinds of industry, like drug manufacturing, fuel block manufacturing, structure manufacturing, and fold those concepts, plus some of the ones that they've experimented with in Eve Echoes, to make it so that industry, instead of being flat, plain, sky-high cliff, is now this kind of ramp up where anyone can get started. It's dirt simple, but as you get up there, it gets harder and harder. My green screen is...
It's all right. It was just because your hands
not having a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's really important to point out, because as people that don't do any industry, I don't think people realize how dramatic of a difference in in complexity and in difficulty T1 to T2 is. T1 industry is almost unsustainable as a group activity because it's so easy for an individual to just do it. T2 industry is almost impossible to do as an individual activity with no support, without it, like a sprawling alts or something like that. So there needed to be more middle ground.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my soapbox on that.
And cruiser-based T3 is even more complicated than T2, so it gets really crazy.
Yeah. T3 stuff is largely based off of T2 stuff, like the same concepts, but shuffled around a little bit. So yeah, there are other things that add a little bit of complexity, but really it's like there's all of this stuff where industry is actually an incredibly shallow gameplay right now.
Yeah, it's super flat.
And then there's all of this high level stuff that is almost impossible to grok without like reading a field manual or something. And so the idea here is like, how do we make steps along the way? It's like, okay, well, now you use minerals and a little bit of PI. Now you use minerals and this reactionary stuff. Oh, well, if you want to learn some basics about reactions, then you can do this. You should probably have a little bit of a PI colony now, whatever. Like, it makes industry into a journey of how to acquire an increasing complex supply chain.
Yeah. And yesterday we talked about the skills. There's about 250 to 275 days worth of skills that you need to train up. So it's a little more dedicated, a little more active gameplay per se, and not necessarily a second thought as it was in the game before, at least T1. Okay.
Thank you. And to be clear with those skills, the expectation isn't that a single person would train all of those skills. That's why there's so many skills. It's because each empire has their own sciences, and those sciences are used to build these Tech 2 things. So any given Tech 2 item has usually, I think, 2 different science skills that apply to them. So a Galente drone will have certain things, and maybe a Caldari drone may have may share one, but have a different one or something like that. And so this controls what data cores you use. This controls what skills you use. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, the expectation here isn't that you actually build everything. The expectation here isn't that you train all of the skill points. The expectation is you decide what thing you produce and then train the skills to produce that thing, knowing that there's going to be less competition because you're only competing against other people who have trained the skills to be able to produce that.
Yeah, it's like ships. You train into the ship you want to fly for a while, and then you train into the next one you want to fly for a while. So, okay. What's this about a cluster failure?
Oh, this morning. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this morning there was a complete cluster failure. It lasted, I think, about 30 minutes. They brought it back up. It wasn't a big deal. I will say that if you lost anything this morning, petition it. Worst they can do is say no, and the petitions actually help them triage situations potentially. So don't be afraid to. But yeah, it's one of those things that happened, and they communicated on Twitter.
Yeah. All right. So we got disconnected.
Yep.
All right. Ashtarothi, something about a Sino here. Let's bring that up. Oops. Wow.
Oh yeah, no. So one of the news today, I didn't have like a video or something to show about it. I didn't see if they were doing a party or anything, but I did see an announcement on Reddit this morning that Horde has turned 6 years old. Pandemic Horde is now
Happy
6 years
birthday.
old. Happy birthday! So now we have a good measuring stick for the rise of the new bro friendly swarm organization that kind of became very popular during the empire building phase of EVE. No, it's a good group of guys.
Yeah. If you, I think a few episodes ago, I gave you the origin story of Horde, where they came from, how they were motivated early on, where a lot of their classic themes come from. Horde really comes out of Brave. And if you want to know more about that, there's an article called The Brave Story. I'll bring it up here. And that talks about how basically when Karma Fleet broke off of Brave and when Pandemic Horde broke off of Brave. And Northern Army, which actually fell apart. So it was like, unfortunately, didn't survive. Let me see. Do you remember Brave early on, Ash?
Oh yeah, Brave got formed because of Asakai. The battle for Asakai attracted a bunch of people that could join the game, and that included this guy who was, I believe he was like a either way, he like ran a company or something like that. So he was already like an organizationally minded person, and so he wanted to get into EVE. He just like everybody else that was joining at that time, he was really excited. And what he ran into was a whole bunch of better vets that were super focused on ISK per hour and all this stuff, and don't do any of those things. That's boring and lame and whatever. And so he created an organization that rejected that notion and had the standing philosophy of fun per hour as their guiding motto. And they pretty famously were okay with how bad they were for a while, but within exactly 1 year later to the day, when the sovereignty of BTAC-R suddenly came into question in a way that people didn't expect, Brave actually was at that fight in a pretty significant way. And so it's a pretty interesting, I always think of the story of the Battle of Asakai to the Battle of BTAC-R as being really interesting bookends to the origin of Brave newbies.
Yeah, they came around right after all that. Okay, so happy birthday to Pandemic Horde, which is essentially it's not the offspring of Brave. It literally is the arm that was carved off the body of Brave by Pandemic Legion. Because Pandemic Legion was trying to woo them into participating with Pandemic Legion because, again, at the time they had rebalanced ships, made T1 frigates useful, especially with E-War, and now you had a ton of guys that wanted to get in on big fights, and they could fit into a T1 frigate, and they could do E-War right away. And that big cloud of E-War was something that could be very helpful to advanced players that had dreadnoughts, for instance, so they could lock up the opponents while the dreadnoughts went to work on the opponents. So Pandemic Legion saw that as a benefit to them, but they also saw it as like, these are new guys that are fresh faces that are really excited about the game. They're not coming in bitter. And so they're fun to hang out with because they're very impressed when they see a Titan, right? They actually go ooh and ah. And also,
yeah, actually, in the "Oh my God, that's a Titan," or there's a "This Is Eve" video or whatever.
Yeah,
the Titan jumps in and you hear, "Oh my God, that's a Titan!"
Yeah, they actually
that line and the "How do I warp to something?" I think those are both
Yeah, real.
from them.
Yeah, there's also a video.
All of the audio from that was real,
There's-
but both of that was from them.
I got you. There's also a video of NC Dot dropping in on a couple carriers from Cult of War in front of Brave Newbies, and you can hear their audio, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's a Titan!" And everybody freaks out, and they're like, "Whoa, that's NC Dot!" And being an NC Dot, that feels pretty good because you're impressing people, and so that was something that PL, every veteran likes that, but PL saw this as like, hey, you guys, we can bring you along on a contract, and you can kind of come with us, and we'll show you what it's like to be on a contract in nullsec. But Horde didn't want anything to do with politics, and so Horde had a lot of instability with leadership because of problems with their tensions between their FC and their CEOs, and the FCs basically said, we're going to Horde. So that's kind of what happened, and that's how Horde kind of got started. But really, it took Gobbins getting involved to really make it what it is today. Happy birthday.
But all of this was also happening due to massive changes that were happening in EVE Online, or I don't know, whatever, changes that resulted in a big shift in focus from having smaller elite groups of people towards how many people you can have, right? This was I think this was even a little bit before like the ADM era, but that definitely solidified it. But as things like OTEC, which was a cartel that allowed the Imperium, before they were the Imperium, to make a ton of money on technetium by artificially overinflating its value. That's true. The point was, once upon a time, they basically just milked these moons and just had tons of money, and so they didn't worry about it. And the idea was that if they brought more people in, they'd have to share that wealth, and so it was about finding the right people. But then it became more about ratting taxes and holding and increasingly working your territory, and so suddenly these organizations went from being very insular to suddenly needing to as many people as possible. And Brave at that time, when the alliances of that era failed to embrace this new bro group that was coming in, that's the reason why Brave exploded, was because these new bros came in, were unhappy with the institutions that they saw this new bro institution, and saw that as the answer to their problem. And collectively they got together and they created a different kind of culture and a different view of the game. And that helped them, survive and sustain. But what it also meant was that Brave was very valuable as an ally, but nobody really knew what to do with them quite yet. And so they bounced around a lot in the early days, and they got used a lot by various different institutions in different ways. But very quickly, especially after BTEC-R, as you start to see the rise of Horde and Karma Fleet, one of the reasons why you see that is because all of the major blocks by that point had acknowledged that we need to have our own swarm of some kind. And so each of the empire, or each of the group maiden blocks, or whatever you want to call them, created their own version of it. And since Pandemic Legion is generally like to see themselves as significantly more chaotic, they generally don't have, they rotate their leadership. They don't necessarily have the same loyalties from campaign to campaign. They see themselves as a virus, and there's like a bunch of like chaos is bred into their order. Their newbie group, Horde, was seen to be given like a lot more leverage than, say, Karma Fleet to the Imperium, and Brave is, of course, their own thing. So Horde, while nominally connected to Pandemic Legion, has always been exactly what their name is. They're a horde. They rarely try to organize them into cohesive blocks. Diplomacy with them is difficult at best. It's often best to just convince Horde to go to an area to just destroy everything that is there, rather than get them to go after strategic things. But they really have built their own position and strength within the game at this point. And this is when you correct me in all the things I said wrong, because I'm a dirty Care Bear.
Well, it'll take a long time to correct all that, unfortunately. But okay, I was letting you riff. You're doing good.
No, and like I said, there's definitely background processes, and I guess what I just explained is, I guess, the narratives that have been spun over the years. So that's like the presentation as I've interpreted it, as it's been given to me over the years as I've watched this play out. So maybe it's wrong, but I feel like that's like what it seems to have played out.
There's a lot of strands in there that are correct, and I think you kind of had to live through the era to kind of figure out all the stuff, like you did, like I did. I was already news writing at the time and putting out hundreds of articles, that year on what was going on. I already kind of played Eve, like I'd kind of done everything there was in the game by that point. So I was in the mode of like understanding it and stuff. And I was, kind of dismissive. So I'd kind of dismissed Brave. I always thought they should have stayed low sec and unpolitical, but they grew too big and they decided to get into null sec, and that just doesn't work, not being political at that point. So they got into a bunch of trouble, and that became interesting. And that's when I actually started looking at Brave. I always say Brave, but I'm linking it to the origins, the beginnings of not only Karma Fleet, but Pandemic Horde in this case, who's turning 6. So around 2015, a lot of stuff was going on.
Yeah. I can give you a slightly different perspective, right? So I played, it was around when Brave kind of came along. I was there, saw that. And then around 2015, around 2015, I kind of just did my own thing. I couldn't play a lot. So I've been playing and had, but very low key, often high sec mining, just kind of developing some other characters. And then I decided in mid to early 2017, come back, start playing again, a little more PvP and all that sort of stuff. And somehow I just missed this Pandemic Horde kind of appearing out of nowhere. And so literally within, for the most part, a year, that first year, there was a noticeable difference in how everything happened in nullsec and how the encounters, it was a noticeable change and very quick. And so props to PL and Pandemic Horde, how they put that together, and how they really dramatically changed how the game was played in a very short period of time. A lot of these things tend to, take 2-3 years usually to develop over time. That, I literally remember asking myself, who are these guys? And are they really part of Pandemic Legion? I had to go and actually do a bunch of research and really try to find out, ask a bunch of questions, talk to some old contacts. Because I was like, who are these people? Because they had significant impact in battles and fights and the game very quickly.
Well, again, the Pandemic Horde is a little bit different than Karma Fleet. We'll just talk about their characteristics now. In that Pandemic Horde, anybody can join Pandemic Horde. Whereas in Karma Fleet, you have to be vetted in because it's actually, Karma Fleet is a corporation inside of Goon Swarm. Pandemic Horde is an alliance. And they actually have a bunch of differences. But a lot of Pandemic Horde's success, even if you look at their branding, the little beans and the little playful type of branding that they do for themselves, is very reminiscent of Goon Swarm and the Bees. The sex, the SIGs that they did, not the sex, right? No X, that's CKS.
I got to tell you, voice to text, I use it a lot because I'm dyslexic and I don't want to type a lot, and saying low sec never works out. It sucks so bad. Sorry, carry on.
So inside of the SIGs, there's kind of like a lot of the lessons that Horde used in order to organize themselves. Not all of them, but a lot of them were from watching what was successful over in Goon Swarm. I don't know if that's deniable. There's too many things. Even the war bonds that happened earlier, goons were laughed at, and then you see war bonds in Test, you see war bonds in Fraternity, or in I don't know, NC Dot maybe. But the point is, a lot of good ideas come out of the Goon Swarm, out of the Imperium, that are usually copied by other groups. I think the thing that sets Horde apart, though, is a different philosophy about what a new player is capable of. Whereas Goon Swarm is a lot more closed, right? If you're not in Goon Swarm, you're essentially an enemy of Goon Swarm. And you don't get into, and that's for me, I'm saying that, not talking in stations. But in order to get into Goon Swarm, you have to be vetted. You have to go through a security process. They don't want anybody around that they don't trust, and that sort of stuff. Horde doesn't do that. Horde is anybody can join,
Right.
anybody can leave at any time, and you can participate all the time in pretty much everything. So it's a much more open society. That's completely different.
Yep. And it very purposeful. That was the phrase I was looking for. It seemed to me that Horde, the creation of Horde, was a very purposeful set of steps. Whereas sometimes you just kind of, hey, let's put something together, and you kind of fall into, greatness. In terms of Pandemic Horde, it certainly seemed a very purposeful and deliberate way of putting things together. And so, hey, happy birthday, well done. That's
Happy birthday, Horde, 6 years old. Okay. Let's see. These are just the opening. These are just the opening headlines.
Literally, that's all. It's also all we got. So,
all we got.
Besides, what are we doing this weekend? So, which we could get to next, or soon. But I do want to talk real quick.
Where are you going to go?
The tweet. Or which one
go
do you
ahead.
want?
Go to the tweet. Yeah, and then we'll go to the. Go ahead.
Actually, I'll go to the Hall of Echoes next.
Yeah, I want to know about this. This is our own.
Yeah, actually, this is something I'm excited to watch. This is kind of about a little bit about what to do this weekend, which we'll get into afterwards. But the Hall of Echoes, our own Who's a Fish makes a Eve Echoes video too, and so in Echoes they just recently got sovereignty, and so they're just feeling out their first attempts at being dicks to each other, and so this group called the Golden Horde rose up and was really showing to be a very strong contender for power player in the game. And then a bunch of groups came together in a coalition, including the Genesis Foundation, which, full disclosure, I am part of, and pretty much kicked him in the teeth. And so this is a interview with the head of the Golden Horde. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it myself, but I actually had it already recommended to me by somebody who knows that I'm into Eve Echo stuff. She just released it today. So I'm really excited to go check it out myself because I want to know more about how this works. It really is interesting how Eve Echo's player base has handled their they're moving into Eve or to the game itself, right? Because in a lot of ways, to me it reminds me of like vanilla WoW, or the WoW remastered classic servers. Yeah. When they came out with that, like I remember watching this really interesting video about like the dichotomy or the difference between like what we talk about when we talk about the good old days of World of Warcraft versus the reality of playing in actual classic WoW. What does actually come back as being like, oh yeah, this was something that was important, versus things that are like, oh yeah, I'm totally over it within 6 seconds. I want to get back to the way it is now. But Eve Echoes has some of that in the fact that it is basically a complete reset of Eve Online. But in general, the Eve Online player base has rejected Eve Echoes in a weird way. And yet Eve Echoes has a pretty okay player base. I don't know the exact numbers, so I don't want to use anything that will be used against me, but it seems healthy enough at the moment. So, I mean, there's groups and wars and big conflicts and lots of ships dying. So, but most of the people in Eve Echoes have never played Eve Online, and most people in Eve Online have never played Eve Echoes. So it's interesting to keep an eye over the side, especially since we know that CCP is. CCP is watching how things are done in Echoes and how the players respond to them, and they could potentially learn lessons. For example, as I've mentioned before, in Eve Echoes, everything has some minerals and some PI in it, or something like that. Like every ship has a mineral component and a PI component, and so just you having your own PI colony is just an expectation. Now it's a little bit different because it's literally just like every 24 hours you have to hit the button to keep the timer going for 24 hours, and every 2 or 3 days you get the stuff out of the can. But still it's kind of like a thing. Like if you haven't started your PI colony, what are you doing?
Well, I think you said something that's kind of interesting there, in that they have references to New Eden that are completely separate to our references. It's almost like you have a stepbrother that you've never met, and then you go to the beach with your dad, and there's this guy calling your dad dad, and that must be a really weird feeling.
Yeah, but so the thing is that the Eve player base, like our culture, affects how we process things. And so it's interesting to see, and more importantly, like because Eve is a game where we the expectation is that you're taught by another player. It's a very like lineage knowledge of how to play Eve is handed down from player to player as opposed from CCP to player via tutorials or whatever. And so what that means is that we also pass on our assumptions, our feelings about the matter, our failures, and our perspective, which is actually a different perspective than theirs. So whereas in Eve Echoes, they don't have those contexts. So like, for instance, it's very common for them to put together like a 4 or 5 man group to go run missions or event sites or something like that, whatever it is, together. Like that idea of like forming a group and doing PvE together is just something that is totally ingrained in their culture. Whereas in EVE Online, CCP has thus so far failed to get the player base to look at any problem besides asking how many alts does this take, or whatever, or how can I solo this?
All right. Let's. I'm tapping out of Eve Echoes.
Yep.
Let's go back to EVE Online, because that's the
moving
audience.
on.
That's the audience we have. So okay, so you caught us up on this video, and you can check it out on Talking in Stations. Who's the Fish there in the bottom left? She's our Eve Echoes expert and also an alliance leader in the game. So what's this?
So,
what's this Twitter about?
Yeah, so about a couple days ago, I was on Reddit, and somebody posted a Reddit thread that is a pretty common thread every once in a while, shows up, where somebody's just got back from the game, and they just realized that Cyno's changed pretty significantly about a year ago.
Sorry.
And he's just losing his goddamn... No, I mean, exactly. And he's losing his goddamn mind in this Reddit post, ranting about it, and I'm sure he's expecting everyone to be like, yeah, but the thing that got me was that by far the most upvoted post was telling him to harden the fuck up, which I found really interesting because the concept of telling people to HTFU has kind of fallen out of favor in the last couple of years. I have found in the way that we discuss new features being built or whatnot. So it's interesting that now that we're a year out, it seemed like the collective, at least on Reddit, had decided that the Cyno changes were good, and anybody who was complaining about that was just being a whiner. So I thought maybe this was because Reddit community is a very specific subset of Eve players. I like to jokingly say Reddit Eve is for people who have been banned from the forums. But either way, or can't post on the forums. At any rate, but so I went on Twitter. Twitter has a tweet fleet, which is a whole bunch of Eve players discuss Eve on Twitter and avoid preferably discussing politics with each other on Twitter. So I put out a post, a Reddit thread today, brought up the Cyno changers happening over a year ago, got me thinking, how do you feel about the Cyno changers? How do you feel about those who hate recon, blops, or the mobile Cyno beacon requirements for Cynos now? And my two answers were Cyno changes were dumb and HTFU get good. And I got 41 votes. I didn't really promote it too big, but I got 80% HTFU. And so I feel like even though this is important to me as we continue to process these changes, industry changes, as people continue to cry about the sky falling, quite often when we look back on these a change that was highly controversial a year ago, people realize that it is actually just a better game now. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I trying to be too idealistic?
What you're seeing is the video called HTFU, and that's why we call it that. There's an old video. Those are all CCP devs acting out their what do you call it? Music video fantasy there. Right.
No,
So,
I want to know whether or not you guys disagreed with me or what you thought.
no, I think it is odd that people are now chanting the "harden the fuck up" aspect of it, but I think that's kind of the flow of Eve in general. You know, I can go back 5 years, 10 years, and there was changes, and at the time it's changing. You know, people don't like change at the time it's happening, but if it brings something positive after a while, then they can learn to live with it, and then it becomes the norm. And now anyone who bitches about it now has to harden the fuck up. They were all the ones who were screaming and bitching, I can't believe the changes, I can't believe the changes, and they would have lost their minds if they were told at the time, harden the fuck up. But it's a year later, so it's the way it is now.
Right. And to be clear, I'm my interest here is less on individuals, who being loud about it. The reason why these votes are important is because, upvotes and downvotes are the way that people can control what is seen and whatnot, and is often done that way. And therefore, I feel is more of a measure of like the zeitgeist, the overall cultural, what is deemed to be a culturally acceptable
Right.
position to have on the matter, which I think is really interesting. And Arya is super evil because he's planted into my head. I wonder if Tosasov will get the same result in a Twitter poll. And I am now equally parts really tempted to put that poll up and concerned that I might get tarred and feathered and ran out of the tweet fleet community forever if I did. So we'll see. But that's an interesting question. It's an interesting question. One of the things I do think about Fozisov, and as I've watched it over the years, is that there seems to be kind of this cycle where everybody kind of complains about Fozisov as being the worst ever, but every time that there's like a big conflict, everybody, there's always somebody that's like, and Fozisov actually worked this time, acting surprised about it, but it always seems to be doing okay, at least past the original hiccups.
All right. Well, go ahead and put it up. We'll see what happens. What else we got in the bag of Friday tricks? There's did you want to do the Eve Hunt? What to do this weekend?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think he's
my son is reminding me that he's hungry. So let's go ahead and wrap up the hour with what to do this weekend. So I'm going to try to every Friday really think about what it is that Eve players might want to do this weekend if there's anything going on. So this weekend there's really two things to think about. The first thing is the hunt. And we posted several videos this week where we discussed the hunt. There's a video from Tuesday where I broke down the mechanics of the hunt pretty completely, and there's other good explanations of the hunt. If you the better sites are in Caldari Lowsec, and that is somewhere between 100 to 300 million ISK per site. The hacking sites are somewhere between 5 to 10 million ISK or whatever per data site, which isn't great, but I mean, whatever, it's a data site. And the high-sec sites are somewhere between 5 to 20 million per high-sec site. But it's also worth noting that you can get jackpots in even in the high-sec sites. So one of my buddies got the biggest jackpot of the entire night, the 5% Valimar implant that increases tracking speed. That is currently estimated at 2 billion, but I'm pretty sure he'll probably be able to sell it for about 1 billion. But got that in a high-sec site. So, and he got it in like his third site. So his expectations were completely screwed, and he's been running high-sec sites expecting another one ever since, and I don't have the heart to tell him. But it's a pretty cool thing to do. Even if you just want to go out there and kill some pods to get the points to get the skins, it's this weekend and next weekend. Next weekend will also be, not this weekend, but the weekend after will be the PvP event. So if you want to, right now, if you want to, you can build assault frigates to have them ready for the inevitable price spike that will happen next weekend during the Abyssal PvP event. Speaking of industry, there's a very strong chance that all of these industry changes will be happening sometime either the 13th or shortly thereafter. So if you have BPCs and mats or plans or whatever, I would break out them spreadsheets, do some math, make a choice about the future, place your bets, because I've never seen a change this big in Eve. So might as well get ready for it. Absolutely. That's it. That's what I got. That's what I would recommend doing this weekend.
Yeah, get a little industry. I would also recommend sort some of your industry. Just decide what you're doing. Don't go mad over it. Just decide, or be a good Eve bro and give it to a friend or collaborate. Make it a weekend with friends and decide you're gonna gather those last few minerals or go run some sites or go do the Easter hunt. Yeah, there's lots of fun things you can do with a friend or two or with a group. This isn't necessarily have to do it solo. Um, Lots of interesting things happening in nullsec this weekend. We talked about that last night. Won't go over it. And hey, if you're terminally bored with all of that, Ash Rossi has been putting out a lot of really good videos. Go watch his videos. He's got what are you up to now? 4 or 5, something like that, or is it more? You're on mute.
I don't know what you're talking about. So we released our first video with TIS this week, which is the Drifter lore video. I do have some videos on my YouTube channel, but a lot of them are older. I will be making some in the near future, but
It's that.
definitely
That's
check
one.
out the
Okay.
Drifter video.
Yeah, the Drifter one was really good. I watched Drifter, and I thought maybe my misunderstanding. I thought you'd done a couple others, and you have one in production,
Right.
but we were going to kind of briefly touch on that a little bit. I think there's just a general topic which we'll probably save for later. In general, I'll give you a little teaser though. That's just about creating impartial news reporting. It has been a topic at TIS. We're very open at talking about what side we're on, and you have some unique points of view that you want to share. I think someone can you say where right now you do kind of have a place where people can get a preview of those thoughts?
Are we gonna talk about this out here in the
Well,
public?
I was
No.
just
Well, so we were discussing, and I've talked about it on air, that like I like to look at the issue of the war more complexly, and rather than be a cheerleader for one side or the other, I would like to have discussion about it that was closer to like a sports punditry, right? Like people who understand the thing that can be like, and this is what they're, you can discuss the strengths of both sides, the strategies of both sides, and the wins of conditions of both sides. Right. And so, making sure to really point out that, like, in spite of the damage that's being done to the physical structures and territory of the Imperium, ultimately that isn't what makes or breaks them. And so their win condition and their objectives are significantly different. And to that end, they released a new YouTube video today, a music video, that was really, really, really high quality. And it struck me that, World of Warcraft had a community of like 10 million people at its height. And so there was plenty of content creators that made music and stuff like that at that time. And sure, the technologies and stuff that we use to build these kinds of things have gotten better over time. But I feel like the amount of effort or the amount of quality, the amount of just labor or precision that goes into these videos that are made by both sides of this war is so high. And the reason why is because if I make a music video about World of Warcraft, I'm basically just making a video that's celebrating my nerdy hobby and showing off like my video creation skill because that makes me feel good. This is that the music video that was made by the Imperium or released by the Imperium today, or the Imperium member today. I guess it wasn't officially by the Imperium.
Where is that one?
Shoot.
It's in our channels here. I'll get it.
It is.
I got it.
Okay.
It really, to me, drives home the fact that the Imperium need to preserve their culture above all else, need to keep in mind their objectives, not allow their membership to be persuaded or dissuade by the enemy's actions and propaganda. And so this video is part of the war effort, right? He didn't just make this video because he likes Eve and he really wants to put some like cool smash up of some like song with his footage of him poning noobs. He made this because he's hoping that it will help keep the Imperium together and get the Imperium to their victory condition. And because was done for an objective, you can see the additional work, the additional value that was poured into it, that a relatively smaller community of 50,000 people can somehow produce this high quality of video content this frequently. I think it is commendable how effective the Imperium are at cultivating and growing and projecting their culture, at least internally.
Yeah, it's a really good video, and you can watch it a couple different ways, right? You can watch it just to watch it, or you can watch it objectively like you are. And I think all of the e-videos kind of recently have that. The topic I was bringing up is kind of the greater umbrella of this. Anytime we're right now talking about the war, we're obviously talking about the very large war going on, but building up our methodologies and the community to engage with us through those methods, to be impartial, or to at least to show both sides impartially, is a long-term goal of TIS for this war, for the next war, and for all future wars. And so I think in general, for me, when we were talking about it earlier, the topic for me goes way beyond the current war. It goes to the audience and people, and for us to try to find ways to get people on who can represent both sides of the conflict in, like you said, in kind of an informed manner, so that we can have kind of those types of discussions that we like to have, to talk about both sides and be an objective reporting agency in Eve, and do so by exploring all sides of a topic or of a war, or whatever the item is of the day.
Right.
And so and that it can be difficult, and so then it becomes very difficult because the meta game is so powerful in Eve. Anything you do, even in this medium, in the attempt of being objective, can be construed the wrong way. And so at some point you just have to kind of keep working the plan, and you just have to believe on some level that we truly are trying to be objective in the reporting in the show. And the more people that we can get on equal balance on either side in a constructive conversation, or a nice debate without screaming at each other or turning it into a propaganda show, adds value to the listeners and the people, and then ultimately adds value to the game, which is kind of my big objective to this, for me as a kind of a podcaster through the years.
All
Right. Yeah. And the thing though that I think needs to be pointed out though is that Eve is unlike other games that have competition, because there is no stated goal that everyone should be working towards. So when we say one side versus the other side, we might interpret that as being like, I1 versus U1, two basketball players, right? But ultimately, both basketball teams went into that game agreeing what winning looked like and what they were trying to do. And they may have some secondary objectives within their own little culture or community or whatever, but ultimately, their metric of success is the same. In Eve, this is not true. So when I'm saying that the Imperium, it's not just that the Imperium have their own spin, it's that they have an entirely different perspective and understanding of what success and failure looks like, and where their potential path to success and failure comes from than Pappy. So it's not just about understanding the other side, it's about understanding the other perspective, the other sets of goals, the other sets of strengths and their culture. And that is much, much, much harder to do, especially in an environment where this is playing out live, especially when you happen to be one of the other major news empires within a group, and explicitly in which one of the other news empires is the Imperium's, cultural epicenter, and therefore, by definition, we start out as a default of being not the Imperium and start from there. So it's a very tricky challenge indeed.
Absolutely.
What are you guys talking about? Like,
I don't.
you're baiting me in, and
No.
I don't know what he did.
I'm dressed,
This is
I'm
his
dressed
fault.
like
This
a
is his
convict
fault.
today
I'm
because
trying
I'm
to
going to
dance
come
through
at
it.
you like a convict, but I think you guys are completely wrong. I'm not going to apologize for having opinions on talking in stations, but I will do
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah, I don't think you should apologize at all. I think, though, we should strive to show both sides. I don't apologize.
We show
to have my opinion.
analysis, which is discussion, which comes out of my experience, comes out of your experience, comes out of Ashtarothi's experience, and everybody at TIS is from both sides. We naturally, organically represent both sides. If one side's decide they want to keep that quiet, we can't account for that vacancy in the way that it should be accounted for if they were public, but they're not. So that's up to them.
Yep.
The way I see it is completely different. But I do want to say this. I want to show this because if you want something like that, this is a really good operator right now. She is Frosty's OP, and she has a bunch of great videos. As you can see,
very neutral, just talks about what's happening.
Yeah, if you want that, that's where you can get that. I will totally yield that to her because she basically does what we wanted to do, which was put out a map and show who's doing what where as soon as this thing shows up. And if you want impartiality or if you want just the facts, please, you got it. You should definitely subscribe to her channel and you should get your fix there as far as like what's going on in the war. But that's not what we do. Talking in stations isn't your news service. We are talking in stations as a group of people who have played this game a long time with analysis, with feelings, with some biases. Yep. We just balance out the bias by making sure that everybody can participate. And that's
really what I'm doing is, for me, I'm in a total agreement with that. I'm making it very clear there is an open invitation to people who, if they wish to come and fill that void. In other words, if you think there's a void here, then come fill it. Don't just point at it and say, there's a fire. There's a fire there, and walk away from it.
Yeah.
Pick up the damn extinguisher, come put out the damn fire if you think it's that important. Otherwise, you live with what we present, and you live with the news that we have. I can't report on something, or if either I'm not there witnessing it live, or if there's not a piece of information out on the metaverse, or if there's a person here telling me about it. Otherwise, you're going to get my perspective on the things that I know in my 16 years of playing. If you want to see a balance. Now, I think, though, it's okay for us to strive to try to open up the floor to create the balance. But if you don't take advantage of it, not my problem. Then you get what you get. I think we're saying the same thing.
We are, but it's not. It's not an issue of. Okay, I know where you're coming from. I know where both of you are coming from, and it is ideal. It is an ideal that we always use as a North Star, which is to get the perspectives and motivations from everybody, because we're interested in the entire organism, not just one side of the organism. But just having this kind of, hey, you're not we don't have enough representation of one side or the other, or we don't have enough representation of wormholers, or we don't have enough representation of faction war. It's like we're not artificial that way. This is very organic. This is very person oriented.
No, it's talking in stations, and that's the whole point. Is that all of this, every episode, everything that we produce, is designed to be an invitation to begin a conversation. That's why we put so much effort into maintaining a great Discord. Arya in chat, who is our community manager, was pointing this out, that we have a very active Discord, and that's the whole point. If you feel differently about it, come have a discussion, polite and respectful discussion, but a discussion. If you want, I don't care who you are. If you think I'm wrong, not only will I listen to you, but I'll sit down and I'll record an interview and let you lay out your story. I've done it before.
Yeah, I've seen you do that. It's pretty amazing. People are like really in your face about something, and you're sitting there totally keeping cool. I admire that.
But the point is that if I'm wrong, that's fine. Just explain why. Teach me. I'm learning too. We all are. That's the whole point.
Right. Anyway, no. This is
nobody's complaining. It was more like just discussion and musings internally and around kicking things around. And then when the video came out, we were discussing the music video. We were talking about uh, coverage of INN or of Imperium versus Pappy, because we are concerned about whether or not we're being perceived as biased, and so that spilled out on air. Yay! Anywho,
I am not concerned about that. It's something that we discuss internally because we
Right.
discuss metrics, we discuss audience, we discuss are we serving the community the way we want to be, and that is just one part of that little puzzle. But am I concerned that we're not serving Imperium members what they want to be eating? No, I'm not concerned about that at all. And we're not a
they have
counterweight.
a seat at the table, as far as I'm concerned.
That's really my concern. Is I'm not concerned ultimately in that regard. I'm just concerned, not concerned. I just want to ensure that they know, as he just said, there's a seat available if you want it.
Yeah, but I'm tired of
you
that,
have to
even advertising that. We shouldn't even have to advertise that. I'm not going to.
Sure, that's good.
I'm
That's a
not
fair
going
point.
to sit here and say like, "Hey, somebody's not eating in my restaurant." Does anybody think that way? No.
So
they
what
just
I will
say, "Am I
advertise
putting
then-
Am I putting out good food for these fine customers that show up?" That's
Fair
where
enough.
you focus. You don't say
what I
who-
will
who's not
advertise
using this.
then is, as a demonstration of how open TIS is, our Patreons are actually allowed to come to all of our quarterly meet. Anytime that we're discussing or making decisions as an organization, we allow Patreons and other people that would have interest in that the ability to come in, and I think that that's a really cool thing. And that's just one of several things that Patreons get for supporting TIS. Ha! See what I did there? That shut
enough.
matter all up.
There we go. Got them all feisty.
I don't know
Got
what
them
you
all
did.
wound up.
My head would spin around if it could, but I don't know what you just did there. We're showing Frosty though because we're going to go ahead and put this. Let's go back to, because we want to promote her work. We feel that she deserves a lot more views than she's getting. She'll get them. She doesn't need our help, but let's get them. Let's get those views there even sooner than they would normally get there, because again, she lays out the map, she draws circles, she talks about what's going on. I don't think there's a lot of deeper narrative than what's going on. She does explain the context of things, which is really good. And so if that's what you want, that's a great place to get it. In addition to what we do here, which is talk from an individual and experienced position. And again, our main goal is to break down what we see, the strategy in military efforts, the anthropology in lifestyle, and we try to break that down so that people can understand that. I'm actually really loving this topic if you guys want to go on with it. Even though I'm in my convict outfit and, being very aggressive towards you.
No, it's fine. I did actually before, since we've now left the trail way behind, I want to actually circle all the way back to what to do this weekend. No, speaking of videos that have been released today, a lot of our topics today have all been videos that have all been released today. But actually, CCP snuck out an extra video that wasn't listed. So if you sub to them, it's not there, I don't think. But CCP Aurora tweeted it. And what she did was she made a specific YouTube video that was just for how to descan, specifically with the context of hunting for these mysterious pods within for the event. So if you're trying to use probes to descan the capsules, just realize that's a pain in the butt. It's better to use descan. There's a very simple step-by-step process that you can go to lock in on or identify where the pod is, go get it, kill it. And descan is one of those tools that really divides the wheat from the chaff when it comes to pilots in EVE. And so, as I said before, when it comes to this event, one of the things that this event is good for is, this is your annual opportunity to get effectively paid to practice your descan skills. So, get out there, throw it 5 degrees, and follow her guide or one of the other guides. But the video that was posted by CCP Aurora is a really good breakdown of exactly the algorithmical process of descanning down a pod quickly. And that becomes valuable if you are PvPing in nullsec, if you're in faction warfare. The ability to use DScan to remain aware of your situation is invaluable to piloting. So I encourage everybody to spend time, watch that video, and practice it a little bit. I don't care how long you've been playing this game.
Sorry, what video is that?
It's the one. It's on the thing. It's right next to the hunt, right below. Yeah,
I don't see a link, but if you could surface that for me, thank you. There you go. Great.
I linked it.
Thank you.
It's about 4 minutes long.
Oh, I did show that video. Okay, sorry. I showed it on what to do this weekend, so that was earlier. There you go.
Oh, did we show it already? Okay, in that case, never mind.
Just in the background. Yeah, no. But
I see.
It had no context when he kind of brought it up.
Right, yeah. So definitely listen to it with audio. The audio is the important part here.
I think what we're saying and the visuals today are totally like off, like totally off. I take responsibility for that. That's me.
This is a Friday, right? We've had a long week, and we're getting Matt all fired up. He's ready to shank someone. I mean, we're all good, right?
Yes, with my toothbrush shank that I created.
Yeah, that's right.
Since we are kind of out of order today, I will actually pimp my own thing. I'm going to be streaming again more in the near future, as I've kind of mentioned a little bit yesterday. But tomorrow at 0100, I'll be hosting a Clear Skies viewing on my YouTube channel as kind of a fun get-together thing.
Awesome. Clear Skies, for those who don't know, was a basically series of movies that were created. What's it called? Machinima?
Yeah, Machinima.
Machinima, which is when you use computers and video game animation to create movies, basically.
You build a movie in game engines, right? So yeah, the original Clear Skies was made in the EVE Online game engine, and also the Source game engine. He used like Half-Life characters for the internal scenes. But it's a classic thing. If you're like, what's Clear Skies? Just look up Clear Skies EVE Online and watch them all, or come tomorrow at 01.
It's made a long time ago, and I believe they're working on a refresh too. So
yeah, so he's made 3 episodes, and then for like 10 years, and then like a year ago they did a viewing. CCP actually hosted a viewing of it, and he was there, and that's when they announced Clear Skies 4. But he was also trying to raise funds for that, and so that's one of the things I need to do tonight is double check, because I think that they may still need to raise funds for that. So if that's true, I want to actually bring more attention to that. So I hope to have more information about that by the showing.
Right. Okay. A little more.
I will say though, just to be super pedantic, because I have to, Clear Skies is not canonical. I hate to be that guy. Even this week, somebody was like, "But it's in Clear Skies," and like, he did a pretty good job with like the Caldari Galente War to make sure like he understood the politics of it all, but in particular, everything involving the sleepers and road drones and all of that sort of stuff it was made at a time before we even had the answers to anything about the sleepers. So he kind of took the sleeper lore and the road drone lore and kind of slammed it together, or rather replaced the sleeper lore with the road drone stuff. But as far as a quality 2 hours or something like that of movie watching, it is amazing. It is quotable. It is a piece of classic EVE history and culture. John Rourke. How much? Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the characters, I take it?
It's the main character. Oh my God. You need to go watch Clear Skies again.
I watched it when it came out.
Wow.
But I don't remember it.
Memory cells aren't what they used to be.
Yes.
It is a very quotable movie. So we often have people like just saying quotes from it in chat, which is why we actually end up doing the viewing ship parties pretty much every at least quarter or half a year, because it's time to show it again to the people that haven't seen it yet.
Should probably do some Rooks and Kings showings.
Yeah, that's another good one.
Those are like feature films for EVE players. Unbelievable stuff. Okay, so if you are looking for other things to do in this weekend, there's going to be a lot of activity in Delve, as you have 6 keep stars being attacked before Sunday. So 2 are attacked today. One earlier today, I think it was destroyed. There's a second one being attacked right about now. And then tomorrow, there are two really important ones, GOP and I believe WV6. Those are very important ones. No, the Helm's Deep Gate, basically, that system. EO, it's called, I should probably bring this up, E30. That has a keep star in it that is being attacked tomorrow too. At the same time, minutes apart, GOP keep star goes under attack. Those are two important keep stars, minutes apart. If there's going to be some fight or some action, it's probably going to be one of those keep stars because they're essentially at the same time. So I think one of those will probably be saved if the Imperium tries. But we'll
I was
have
going
to
to ask,
see.
like, if you what do you think? Do you all in on one of them and let the other one just repair and go after it again, or do you actually try to hit both at the same time? I wonder.
It totally
Because splitting your forces could be a very risky move. It's very greedy.
Yeah. Again, one is after the other, but this is exactly what happened in the M2 situation. There were too many keep stars too close together, and without good coordination, there was slip ups. That slip up was taken advantage of because the Imperium was able to easily jump a bunch of Titans onto one keep star, and then they dared Pappy to move their Titans in, and that created M2. But it happened in a situation similar to this. Too many keep stars too closely together, and slip ups can happen.
And the problem is that it doesn't even have to just perfectly overlap, because a keep star, like destroying a citadel, takes a half an hour to get through the entire timer if you're at damage cap the entire time. Then multiply that by any sort of tie-dye that happens to be impacting it, and account for the fact that it won't be at damage cap the whole time. And so, a keep star fight is going to take a long time. So even if they're in the same day, chances are the leadership is going to have to make a decision about how they want to, deal with that.
Yeah.
So with the previous version, did they try to go for them all, or did they let some just go?
They just had, in the M2 situation, they had like 2 or 3 keep stars in a row. And there was
so they were able to just chain them?
Yeah, they were trying to just kind of knock off a bunch. It was very aggressive. It was a little reckless. But Pappy was really overconfident at that point because they had really commanded the entire situation. It was tough to get those initial keep stars planted from Pappy in NPC Delve at first. You remember we saw 4 of them go down in big fights, and that was like in October. But by December, they were kind of, taking system after systems, iHub, and they were cruising along. And I think they wanted to step up the cadence, and they were looking for a big fight with the Imperium. And the Imperium was biding its time and totally took advantage of a mistake, which is what we said would happen once these two massive groups got their Titans and super carriers within proximity to one another. Then mistakes would be costly, whereas before you might lose 1 or 2. Now it could be an entire M2 situation that happened. So that's kind of what we're looking for. By the way, Keepstar Hull Bash takes a theoretical minimal time of 24 minutes at full DPS saturation. So
for some reason I thought it was 30. Maybe I just rounded it up for my own back of the napkin math at some point and forgot.
Likely there's a little bit of tie-dye, so it's going to happen. But.
Yeah. So also I want to tell you that we have, let's see, I have a little check-in here on structures. And
what I will say is that the Citadel, which would be the Keep Star, is the more military focused one, has the longest amount of time, the most hit points, and therefore the longest amount of time that it takes for you to finish the timer. So a Writer or an Athenor, or like an engineering complex or a refinery, would have significantly lower amounts of hit points, and therefore, but the same damage, they would have to be at damage cap for a lower amount of time, as well as have a lower threshold for that damage cap. So it takes less damage to be maxing out your potential, and you have to do it for less amount of time with those other structures. But a Keep Star, that is the longest amount of time. It is the most fortified structure in the game.
All right. So There are 15 keep stars in the Delve region that are outside of 1DQ. So let's take 1DQ aside. That has like 4 or 5 keep stars in it. But outside of that, there's 15. 6 of those can possibly be destroyed this weekend. That would put the keep star count outside of 1DQ at less than 10. And this is down from like 40, 39, 40. Imperium never did have 60. That was always a rumor. There was more like 42 or maybe 48, which is a lot if you think about it. And if you look at all the either destruction or the taking down of keep stars or the double counting, which was accidental, or the kidnapping of keep stars, which has happened too, they are now down to less than 10 outside of 1DQ, which is astounding. Also, I think the count for structures that I've seen is about 350 structures left in Delve, I believe. And by tomorrow, it should be a little bit less than that as they destroy some, not only keep stars, but other structures as well. In other words, things are progressing for Pappy. Their goal is to wipe the slate clean. They've done it in period basis. They've done it in Fountain, although some stuff got put back, I think, later. They are doing it now in Quarius. So Quarius is coming down at the same time. I think pretty much Quarius is done. And now Delve, they're in the middle of Delve. It's still going to take another 30, 40 days, but they're moving along at quite a clip. And we don't see a lot of reversals happening. So the demolition of Delve continues.
Another thing I think is important to answer to keep in context, or to keep in context here, is the question: why are there so many keep stars? Like, why would there be so many keep stars to destroy in the first place? Why does it matter if there's 60 versus 40?
At a time, this was the winning formula, because the only reason
more
this
importantly,
can happen, let me just say this, is because mechanics changed to make this allowable. If we were looking at mechanics from 2 years ago, none of this would be happening. Go ahead.
Right, but since the release of Citadels, the Imperium have very frequently used the number of keep stars that they have anchored as a sign of how strong they are, how well they've built back from the previous war when they had to leave decline, and so they put up more keep stars than were practically necessary as this show, or at least they wrapped this in this veneer of like, look at how wealthy we are, look at how much money we have, we can have personal keep stars. You guys don't even have a keep star, and that dude has a keep star of his own. This has been part of the Imperium culture and part of their advertising in a lot of ways for years, and therefore one of the reasons why they are as big and as strong as they are. And so now that very symbol of strength is, just like a lot of these other things, being used against them. They now have to endure watching all of those things burn and process that without allowing their people to feel like that means that the Imperium's leadership has failed them. Because ultimately, that's the win condition. That's the driver, right? If the Imperium, if Pappies, through their actions and through their propaganda and through the events that play out, if they can convince the general membership of the Imperium that their leadership has failed them, then the Imperium will crumble and they will have nothing left. But if the Imperium remain, if they can convince their membership that they are strong and they are united in spite of the fact of what is happening, then it may not matter if 1DQ falls. They would just continue to be them as they've done before. And so ultimately preserving that idea and so it's really, really important to Pappy to ensure that the pain of this process is maximized against Imperium. And it's important to the Imperium to minimize the impact of these actions and draw focus to other things. Actually, going back to that video, the thing that really struck out to me was that in the comments somebody asked, he wasn't even an EVE player, or it wasn't really in the game, but has just been paying attention to it on the sidelines. They said, well, if Pappy is the ones invading and burning all of the Imperium stuff, well, then how can the Imperium call them homeless? And there's an Imperium guy in the post that said, we don't count squatters or something like that. And I thought about it, and it really boils down to that, like, there is actually this other narrative where there are counterattacks going on in backlines of Pappy and Pappy loyal forces, and the Imperium in particular are really trying to focus on the damage and the loss of a home that Pappy now has, and therefore that's a fundamental baked-in concept within that music video. In order to get the music video, you have to accept the premise that Pappy is homeless, which is a different kind of insult. It also seems to imply, because Pappy, of course, has the assumption that once they're victorious, they will divide up the territory, and therefore homelessness is a ridiculous accusation. So that's what I mean by these are two totally different perspectives. And so depending on which perspective, which framing you allow to go forward, that's what will, affect people and ultimately will either make or break the Imperium.
Rundle?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they in talking with Imperium members, it gets summarized in it doesn't really matter where we are as long as we are together, and in essence that's the narrative that they will push to show that it doesn't matter, and because that's their culture. That is true. It is a truism, and the more they stick to who they are as an organization, the greater chance or the greater level of success they'll have in succeeding and not caring about what the real, what the answer, or sorry, what the outcome of the war is, right? Because the outcome will be measured however they choose to measure it. Same on both sides, to be fair. And so they will go wherever they want to go and be whoever they want to be. And as long as they stay together, then they have victory. That's the way they talk about it, and they believe it. And they're organized that way too. They're just one large group as opposed to a collection of groups.
All right, I'm back to convict Matterall again with my toothbrush shiv to dole out some justice, some prison justice.
Well, I actually do want to say, because I don't want to come out across as a shill or anything for Goonswarm. I actually fought with Test or on Test side during World War B. But just to be very clear, things are not looking good for the Imperium. Like it has not gone well for quite some time, and it is burning and it is painful. And Pappy has ran an incredibly successful campaign. My point is that when we're talking about these things like 1DQ falling versus not 1DQ falling, we got to remember that it's all about breaking the psychology of the Imperium versus keeping the psychology of the Imperium.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Let's just be clear. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the stuff that's being said is said from, not from us, but out there. I'm talking about like what you're hearing on different avenues of getting messaging out just makes no sense. Like it's literally kids saying that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Well, that's the big risk, right? Like
yeah, we didn't want that space.
Yeah,
at any time, if they lose grasp of their culture at all, then before they know it, they will stop being these smug guys living in their castles, and it'll be a leadership as an ostrich with their head in the sand.
I've not seen Goonswarm be good winners. I've not seen Goonswarm be good losers. Like
no, what I'm saying is that
it's like not part of their DNA to even admit that they're losing. Pappy's not a whole lot better, but they know enough to not be messaging constantly about this or that. Maybe they don't. This is all people talking, carrying water for what they think is, their message and stuff. But it's a big mess of just essentially individuals expressing themselves as best they can about things. But all I've seen is a confusing mess. What I look at is the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is structures and space is being taken away, and there's no answer for it.
There is certainly a lot of destruction and a lot of wealth going away over the last few months.
Yeah, the answer for it is not happening in Delve, but we're looking at Delve as the war ground, right? You can burn up the house I left behind. And yeah, I mean, if you look at it, Test and Legacy are squatters, but they are now starting to put up paintings. They're starting to move in couches. They're starting to like board up broken windows. They're starting to live in your space, and you have nothing to say about it. Like, there's nothing you can do about that until they leave or something like that. And that's just all rhetoric. So whenever I see what people are saying or anything like that, I just have to take that whole thing, put it into a box, and just shove it out the window and just look at what's going on the field. Look at the battle reports, look at the count. You went from 4,000 structures down to less than 500.
Yeah. The thing that's important to note is that this is a video game, right? This isn't a real thing. No one has their real livelihood. Well, I mean, okay, fair enough. But I mean, like it is a video game, and so the reason why I say that is because the Imperium, like all of the Imperium have to continually convince their people to remain loyal. So the Imperium will continue to say that they're not losing all day long. What you should pay attention to is what the membership are doing, because if
I think some of
this game isn't fun anymore,
if this is right now,
exactly, and that's the key. And that
not
and
a
so,
lot, it's a few.
And there's always the constant reversal of rhetoric, right, or counter. So Pappy takes Quarius, or Pappy takes oh, we didn't want that space. Pappy starts moving into Delve. Oh, we didn't want that constellation anyway, right? Pappy moves into Delve. They hunker down. Helm's Deep. Oh nope, whatever, and they reverse. And now they're counterpunching in other areas, and the reality is Pappy's like, yeah, you can have it, basically, because we actually really didn't want it, and then we're mocked. Pappy is mocked and laughed at, and then it becomes a counterpoint, right? It's just this reversal of the same thing, but the narrative is coming from two different sides, and that's what I look at is the purpose of the narrative, and like you, Matterall, what is really happening on the map. What's really happening on the map? So, they will continue because of their DNA. They will never lose in their minds, but the practical reality is even if you can't accept that you lost, you still lose.
Well, I think we heard this whole thing about, and some people think it's true, that, hey, you'll never destroy us, we'll be friends forever. And I'm like, good luck with that, because I don't think that's
of course
how
they
it
say that
works.
now. That's the point. That's the shield.
Well,
that doesn't we don't know. We'll find out if that's true, but that's certainly their defense.
Yeah, we'll find out if that's true. And I actually don't think it's true. I don't think many people agree with me on that, but we'll find out in 6 months to a year, like how strongly knit Goonswarm is. I'm the one that wrote a full article predicting that Imperium could rebound from World War B, and it would be one of the biggest and greatest comebacks that we've ever seen. And I was right about that. And what I'm telling you now from my experience of knowing these people and working and just seeing like EVE Online for so many years is anything is possible. We thought Delve could never fall, and here it is actually falling because the mechanics change. So something can happen to destroy things. Sword Dragon played this game for a very long time. He's no longer playing this game because his life situation changed and he's got to do things outside of the game, but also his power base was taken away from him. And I just feel like, hey, there's an example of something you would think could be eternal in EVE Online and is not. So to say we're impenetrable because in our souls we're bonded and we like drinking beer together, good luck with that. We'll see you in 6 to a year and see how it all looks at that point. But I don't know how this war is going to end. I'm not saying Imperium is going to lose. But even if Imperium wins, I feel there'll be a different organization anyway. It's all very interesting, which is why we spend so much time on it.
Yeah. I think that two things are true, which is that we don't know, two things are not certain, even though people like to discuss it as if it is. It is not for certain that Pappy will successfully clear Imperium out of 1DQ, and it is not for certain that the Imperium will remain together as some sort of cultural monolith even after taking that bad of a whooping? Neither of those two questions have been answered. Pappy is of the position that they will clear 1DQ. Imperium are of the position that they will remain united regardless of what happens, and that they'll also win. So, but ultimately, of course they feel that way, and of course they're saying that. It's a war. It's chaotic, and everybody has their story, and nobody knows what anything's happening, and it's all bullshit because it's war. So here we go.
Yeah.
This is what this is the great war we all wanted.
Right. And so what I'm telling you, going back to the beginning, is that we don't get caught up in that. We say what we believe, and that's all. Right. That's all we can do. We're not going to say like we got to do 50% more, thinking on in this way and stuff. So that's not what we're about at all.
No, and I don't think I was advocating. I don't think any of us were advocating.
No,
that.
I think, and I'm sorry, I'm not pinning this on you guys. I'm almost using you as straw man.
No, that's all good.
Because I got my convict shirt on, so I got to do something.
Yeah, but I fight back. You come at me with a shiv, I'm coming back at you like a wild spider monkey.
I'll probably lose that one.
I don't know if certain Australians have anything to do with any of this.
Okay, so I think we're over time, but we're having fun. If you want to have these discussions with us, you can join us in Talking in Stations Discord, where there are plenty of Imperium members. Yeah, you could see them all in it. So
as we said, like Talking in Stations is all about creating a platform for discussion. It's in the name. It's about just creating talking. So just be civil. Go to our Discord, check it out, hang out.
All right, I'll take your word for it. All right, thanks, guys. We're going to run over to send you over to Open Comms and have a great weekend. We have one thing to announce, and that is that we had an interview with was it No Holds Barred? Oh God, I hope that's it. And they just recently fended off an evac. They're a wormhole group, and so we'll show you that interview tomorrow. So we have something for you even on the weekends. We'll put that interview out tomorrow, and it's actually really cool, really interesting, and a little funny too. So you check that out. Okay, so thanks, Ash, for hanging out, and Rundle, you too.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always fun.
And thank you guys for hanging out with us. Appreciate it. We're going to send you over now to Open Comms for the rest of Friday. Enjoy your weekend. We will see you Sunday on Talking in Stations.